Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pamela Renwick, and I'm the Director of Operations and Communications with Elections Alberta. So I'm presenting today as part of Module 1, but if you missed the presentations in October, some of the pieces that I'm going to talk about might feel a bit too advanced for where you're at. So we do have those session materials posted on our website. So if you want to go back and hear what we said about the upcoming Senate and referendum vote, please go take a look at the video. And we also have our slides from today also posted. So if you want to follow along or you want to go grab a copy, feel free. Our site is elections.ab.ca, and you would look under the heading of elections, and we have a page called Senate/referendum. So after all that information from Angela, I'm sure you're kind of getting a lot of things that are coming for 2021, and I have to add more to that, because we have two big unknowns coming for the 2021 municipal elections. So one is whether or not you're going to be holding a Senate election and a referendum vote in conjunction with your municipal vote. And everything we're hearing right now is saying that yes, there will be additional elections happening at the same time. So I know that adds a lot to your plate. The other piece is, of course, COVID-19 and the concerns about where we're going to be at with the pandemic and how that's going to affect how you plan and conduct the event. So Angela covered a number of the considerations under the Local Authorities Election Act for voting opportunities. And I'm going to go over how these opportunities may be impacted by the Senate election and referendum vote, as well as I'm going to share some of Elections Alberta's plans for conducting an election during a pandemic. And these are only provided for your consideration. We're not promoting any particular choice. You, of course, know the needs and resources of your jurisdiction best for delivering the upcoming election. So the focus of today's presentation will be on the additional voting opportunities that may be provided in your municipality. This includes advanced voting, special ballot, and institutional voting. And I will also discuss the use of alternative voting equipment, such as tabulators. So first, let's start with advanced voting. So the Local Authorities Election Act requires jurisdictions with populations greater than 5,000 to hold an advanced vote. Jurisdictions that do not meet that threshold are not required to hold an advanced vote, but you may pass a resolution to do so anyways. And where you provide advanced voting, sections 73 to 75 of the LEA will apply, and that resolution that you pass will also apply to the Senate election and referendum vote as well. So you wouldn't need to pass an additional resolution, it's just going to apply to that. So what will happen is that electors that are voting in advance will also be offered the Senate election and referendum ballot. So this, of course, impacts the quantities of ballots and ballot boxes that you will need. It will require an amended elector register, so you can record each of those ballots that are issued to the elector, and separate ballot accounting for each of those events. Forms for the Senate election are prescribed in regulation, and we are awaiting a similar regulation for referendum. This will allow many forms, such as the elector register, to be modified to show all ballots issued on one form, so you're not using multiple forms. For jurisdictions that are completing a hand count, Elections Alberta will be providing the ballots for Senate election and referendum. Information on whether you are providing an advance vote, the first advance voting date, and the number of ballots that are needed are essential pieces of information so that we can arrange for ballot printing and ship you your ballots prior to your first voting day. Municipalities completing a hand count should also plan for separate ballot boxes for each contest to facilitate ballot counting after polls close. So consider how this impacts your setup and processes at the voting place to assist electors to deposit their ballots in the correct ballot box for each contest. Jurisdictions that are using tabulators, however, are responsible for providing their own ballots. So those jurisdictions will want to consider whether to consolidate multiple contests on a composite ballot or to use separate ballots for Senate and referendum votes from your municipal election. They will also consider whether to use the same tabulator for all ballots, which would result in all ballot types being intermixed in the ballot box. This is permissible under the legislation, but it does impact the retention period for the ballots as Senate election has a longer time frame than your municipal contests. They need to be held for at least 3 months. Another option that you could consider if you're using separate ballots, you could use the same tabulator and separate the various ballots following the close of polls so that the separate retention periods could be applied to the different types of ballots. As we have seen in the last few months, COVID-19 has changed how election management bodies are conducting elections, and these changes impact your municipality's decisions on the voting opportunities that are provided in the 2021 municipal elections. We have found that more electors are voting in advance with every election we conduct, and in the context of a pandemic, offering more advanced voting can spread your voters across more dates and locations. If Elections Alberta were to conduct an election in a pandemic, we would plan to offer more advanced vote locations than usual to allow for more physical distancing and more location options for electors and to reduce lineups to the extent possible. We are also looking at how in-person voting would be conducted. Some of the pieces that we've been considering include providing PPE and hand sanitizer to our workers and electors, cleaning of high-touch surfaces in the voting place throughout the day, reviewing the supplies in the polls that are used by multiple electors and determining if single use or sanitizing between use is more appropriate, modifying our staffing model so that a single election officer provides services to the elector rather than splitting tasks between multiple workers, and modifying the setup of the voting place to create more physical distancing and, where possible, establish a one-way path for electors to enter, vote, then exit the voting location. The work that we are doing in this area applies to provincial elections, but if you are looking for more information on these topics, please reach out and we're happy to share what we have. Now on to our second topic, special ballots. Municipalities may pass a resolution to provide for a special ballot process. Where special ballot is being offered, sections 77.1 to 77.3 of the LEA apply, and that resolution will also apply to the Senate election and referendum ballots. Electors that are voting by special ballot will also receive the Senate election and referendum ballot in their package. Form 23 SE of the Senate Election and Local Authorities Election Form Regulation requires that each contest be provided on a separate ballot and that write-in ballots are used prior to the ballots being printed after nomination day. For municipalities considering this voting option, we would suggest the following considerations. The first is the timelines for the process. When can applications be submitted? When will packages be sent out? And how much time does that leave voters to complete and return their packages? Ideally, with special ballots sent and returned by mail, more time is preferred, but any packages sent before the ballots are printed will result in electors receiving multiple write-in ballots, which will make a confusing process even more challenging for them to complete. For jurisdictions planning to only send packages after the ballots are printed, and Elections Alberta is providing your ballots, you may need to allow additional days for us to have Senate ballots printed and delivered to you. When completing your municipality's information in MA Connect in the election database, ensure that you let us know that you will be offering special ballots and when you plan to start issuing packages so we can prioritize your ballot shipments or send you write-in ballots if that's what you're going to need. The second consideration is the package design. Electors will be receiving a number of ballots in the package, along with their associated ballot envelopes and return instructions. Streamlining the package as much as possible will be important to assist electors in completing the package correctly. While developing the package, keep in mind what the return process will look like. Consider what documentation is required in each package for you to verify the contents. Do you require each ballot to be placed in a separate ballot envelope, or will they be separated as part of the return process? What happens with packages that are returned incomplete? And do you have a secure place to keep the ballot boxes for the return ballots until the count? The fourth consideration is the process for the count, following the close of voting. Consider when and where the count will take place, who will be completing the count, and the process for scrutineers to observe. And fifth, but central to every other consideration, is whether you have the resources, both people and budget, to support the special ballot process that you envision. As with advanced voting, offering special ballot during a pandemic provides electors with another voting opportunity and can help to decrease volumes at in-person voting places. Most electors, however, tend to prefer in-person voting, so the volumes that will be experienced will vary by jurisdiction and the perceived risk by COVID-19. Elections Alberta has been watching what is happening in other provincial jurisdictions, and while all jurisdictions have experienced an increase in mail-in ballot voting, the percentage of voters choosing this method really differs. We've seen about approximately 39% in British Columbia, 14% in Saskatchewan, and 3% in New Brunswick. Similarly, across Alberta, for municipalities that offer this voting opportunity, we will likely see higher and lower volumes of use, which makes it challenging to plan the resources needed to deliver this voting option. Planning for special ballot in a pandemic leads to some additional consideration. The first is the applicable reasons prescribed in the LAEA and whether those reasons can be used to provide persons with concerns related to the pandemic with a special ballot. And Angela had mentioned that this is something that Municipal Affairs is looking at. Second, and a repeat from the previous slide, is the available resources to build, mail, process, and count the special ballots. The pandemic may result in drastically higher special ballot volumes than you are used to and may require processes and resources to manage. That's different from what you would have had in the past. Third, consider whether special ballots can be fulfilled by mail, in your election office, or both. Offering special ballots by mail removes the need for electors to come in person, but does have increased budget impacts for package materials and mailing. And with the number of ballots that are being offered, may be very challenging for electors to complete the package. Offering a special ballot process out of the election office provides more voting days for electors, reduces costs for the package, and allows staff to provide more instruction for completing the ballots. It does not, however, provide options for people unable to vote in person and requires staffing resources to be available to provide this service in the elections office. Elections Alberta provides special ballot voting by mail and in the returning office, but we struggled to keep up with requests of mail-in voting in the last election, and that was without a pandemic. We are looking at outsourcing the package printing and mailing for special ballots for the next election so our staff can focus on in-person requests. Should you be interested in more information and how we are outsourcing the mail out of special ballots, please contact us and we have some information we can share. Now on to institutional voting. Municipalities may pass a resolution to provide for institutional voting stations in treatment centers or supportive living facilities. Municipalities providing these voting opportunities will apply Section 80 to 82 of the LAEA, and this resolution will also apply to Senate and referendum votes. I imagine you're seeing a pattern by now. As with other voting opportunities, where an institutional vote is offered, the electors would also need to be provided with the Senate election and referendum vote ballots. This may impact your process for collecting those votes, as more ballots equals more ballot boxes. If you're providing this voting opportunity bed to bed in a hospital, for example, consider any adaptations to your process that may be needed. Otherwise, these voting opportunities follow the same process that you have established for advance and election day voting. Again, offering more voting opportunities during a pandemic helps to spread the volumes of electors amongst the various locations and days. With institutional voting, however, this poses new challenges as the people in these settings are the highest risk for infection. Some considerations. These facilities have had various levels of protocols for accessing their sites, and what is in place at the time of the election will greatly impact your ability to provide the institutional vote. This may also change very quickly, as a site that has an outbreak will see greater access restrictions. Our best solution to the access challenges is to work with the facilities to find staff of that facility on a day off that are able to become election officers for that location. This introduces no new risk to the facility and provides election officers that the residents are already familiar with. If you are providing special ballot voting, you may also wish to consider how that opportunity could be used in the case that you are unable to provide the institutional vote in person. Municipalities may also pass a bylaw to use alternative voting equipment, such as voting machines, vote recorders, or automated voting systems. Because the types of equipment vary widely, the bylaw must cover the areas specified in Section 84 of the LEEA. The bylaw passed under this section will also apply to the Senate election and referendum vote. As we know, adding a Senate election and referendum vote to the municipal election results in a lot of ballots and contests that count at the end of the night. Using alternative voting equipment can simplify and shorten this counting process significantly. Additionally, municipalities that use alternative voting equipment are not required to provide the ballots to Elections Alberta in the event of a judicial recount. Rather, we will be asking you for any documentation related to how you determine the results. So things like your ballot accounts, your tabulator tapes, any reports the tabulator or your vendor has generated. Municipalities that are using alternative voting equipment are able to consolidate contests onto a composite ballot, provided that the requirements in the legislation are met regarding content and font size. Use the same alternative voting equipment for all contests, and use the same ballot box for all ballots. But in making the decision to use alternative voting equipment, you'll want to look at the cost of renting the equipment and any vendor support that you require, the cost of printing the Senate and referendum ballots, as Elections Alberta does not provide these for jurisdictions using this equipment, and the processes for completing testing of equipment to ensure that you have confidence in the accuracy and functionality of the equipment you are using. In our review of voting during a pandemic, we have found that the use of automated vote tabulators could assist with providing a safer in-person voting opportunity. Using the tabulator to collect ballots as the elector exits the poll allows us to create a one-way traffic flow in the voting place. This will allow us to process more voters quicker, even with physical distancing requirements. It also eliminates the counting of ballots at the end of the night, which we find advantageous for two reasons. The first is we do not want our election officers to handle the ballots after they are issued to the elector. Removing the ballots from the tabulator ballot box would provide for more minimal rehandling of the ballots than a full recount. And second is that our counting process requires two election officers in close proximity and the option for scrutineers to observe the process. This process would be challenging to complete with additional physical distancing. The tabulators, however, do introduce a new multi-elector use supply for consideration, the secrecy sleeve. Usually made of cardboard, these would be challenging to sanitize between uses and would be very expensive to have as a single-use item. If you are using alternative voting equipment for your election, consider as well the process and supplies that you are using and how they may need to be adapted for pandemic conditions.